Hello everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you very much for joining me here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. We're taking a look, of course, here at Bitcoin, helping you understand best practice, big picture, and the whole 9 yards, right? And what we want to look at is this fun, excellent, awesome trading that's been happening recently, such as these awesome increases, these awesome decreases, and the fantastic recoveries. It's really stupid, honestly, and there's no other way to really describe it except for that it's just completely out of control and fairly unnecessary, a lot of these pumps and dumps, right? And these are just whales playing tricks. They are able to control the market. So the important thing and the way to be able to survive is to effectively wait for confirmation and make sure that you work within support and resistance zones and just, be a careful trader, I guess you could say. And we've been doing some very good things here recently with my trading community, and mostly just happy of the fact that I'm able to make a lot of profit for my community. And let's just touch on that really quick here, because just today, as a matter of fact, this morning woke up for a nice 20-hour 31% profit. That's a leverage long for Bitcoin. Yesterday we took about 21% in 4 hours. Prior to that, just to kind of give you perspective, 57% over the weekend from Bitcoin, 4% for spot, 4.5% for spot on essentially Ethereum, and then of course 44% because we're using, in most cases, 10x leverage, right? And then of course over the weekend took a nice cool 41% in 6 hours from XRP, and that was a short. So again, really awesome stuff. If you're not part of the community, you should jump on board, because I can tell you it's a really cool feature, because I send out signals for every trade that I take, and these are the trades that we're essentially benefiting from, and obviously, of course, learning and growing together as a community. I mean, you check out just how helpful everyone is. It's just an amazing thing to be able to see everyone come together. And some of these trade results too, you can see some really fantastic trades from a lot of my members where they're just cranking out some really good results. Most of this is on their own accord because they've learned how to trade through my university. Okay. Again, just some awesome stuff, and well done, Amir, too. By the way, he's killing it now lately, hitting some really nice longs there for Ethereum, and of course touching on Solana as well. Solana's a pretty big one for our community. All right, so that's kind of that there. And oh, I'm sorry, one last thing too. We're all using it, for the most part, using BitGet as well. So highly recommend using that. I have an affiliation with them mainly because they allow for you to have and use leverage in the United States. It's kind of an uncommon thing without a VPN. Okay, so if you register with this link before November 30th, you can qualify for upwards of $4,000 in bonus USDT. And how you qualify for that is just transfer funds over and use the exchange. Really simple. And I'll tell you what, fantastic exchange. Their level 2 data is phenomenal, and it's just by far my favorite. No more ByBit or KuCoin. 100% BitGet. All right, so take a look here at Bitcoin. What we want to look at, of course, as I mentioned, is kind of this crazy nonsensical stuff, right? Because, how does that affect the overall situation? Well, in truth, what we had here was a typical breakout where the price action came down, worked itself into a wedge, inevitably retested that level multiple times, which was a resistance level about 19,200, and then broke out pretty hard, right? We all saw that. It was a really nice little day there for us. And of course, it's nice to see that on a Monday, right? Nice big breakout. But 24 hours later, or probably it looks like more so 12 hours later, the morning after, I was sleeping right in this range here, missed our short entry, and the price came crashing down, okay? And the reason why it did that is because it rejected off this descending type of trend, and you can see up here, we're still getting rejected out by this region, okay? So we're slowly working our way down, and you can kind of expect Bitcoin to go lower in the overall sense of things. I'm not saying that what we're seeing today isn't going to sustain, but generally speaking, the direction is still down. Okay, so if we look at the daily, you can kind of see here that we have a very strong rejection point up here, of course, at 69,000. And then, of course, you do remember, I hope, 48,000. That was a very impactful time frame because we really thought it was going to continue higher, and it went lower. So back in March, it ended up being a very strong red month, right? And then, of course, recovered through all the way back down here, of course. So again, generally speaking, that's where we're at in the big picture, right? So I like to reiterate that in all my videos so you know roughly where we're at here, because you have to train your brain to note that we're still descending in this trend, okay? And the more you recognize that, the better, just because of the simple fact that it could continue lower, right? We got to celebrate the small wins, but of course, that's just generally the realisticness. So let's take a look at some of the standard stuff here. We're coming up closer to 50 on the RSI. This is positive, but it does imply that we'll see somewhat of a resistance at roughly 19,800. That is essentially a previous resistance area. Even though we wicked above it yesterday, it really doesn't matter. It didn't close above, and that's the important thing. We want a one-day candlestick closure above that, implying that that full 24-hour period was able to sustain a price point above that area. And it's interesting, you'll see closer to 5 o'clock in most days, at least 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, that's when the 24-hour cycle resets and the candlesticks close. You'll see large pumps or dumps right before that time frame. And that happens right in that 4:30 to 5 o'clock range. So a lot of times I'll just kind of sit back and wait for that to happen, or obviously get into it prior to, depending on the day, especially Fridays. I like Fridays for that reason. But generally speaking, there's a lot of different things going on kind of in the back end. But at this point, what we can kind of see is that we do have a MACD convergence on the daily. Okay, so in other words, all this momentum to the downside is finally starting to dissipate, and we have an opportunity for the price action to recover and to continue higher. Okay, so generally speaking, it's absolutely, I would say, more positive than negative here in that sense, but the overall sentiment is still bearish. Okay, let that get into your head. We're still bearish on Bitcoin, but this 24-hour period appears to be looking like it wants to break through a resistance level, and we have a MACD convergence telling us that further upside is possible. Okay, again, all we're doing is dealing in statistical probabilities when you're trading, right? What's the likelihood of it going up or down based on previous behavior? And that's really just why we look at different time frames and extract that information. And that's why I teach that in my university too, to kind of help some of the newer members get a good foundation of trading. Like I'm so impressed with some of my graduates here recently, how well they've been doing. It's amazing to be able to kind of see that in such a short amount of time. So kudos and congratulations to quite a handful of my members that are just killing it right now. But what we want to look at is on the 4-hour here is, first of all, 50, we'll touch on that. We're above 50 in the RSI. And while it dipped down below, it didn't stay down below too long. So hypothetically, the price were to retrace, we could experience a bounce here off the support level at just say 19,200, which was a previous resistance there most recently, okay? Because again, the price action stayed here and hung out here and then broke out pretty hard right at that level. So you can tell there was a lot of liquidity and selling pressure at that point. That's why the price shot up, because likely the shorts got squeezed out because they had their stop loss at 19.2, 19.3, 19.4, and it just keeps on going up and up and up. It's a really interesting thing that happens. And there are long squeezes as well too, where a lot of longs got liquidated to the downside. So it works both directions. It's just typically more severe to the upside than the downside, just based on how shorts work naturally. They're commonly more so leveraged than longs. All right, so here's kind of where we're at in this sense. We got a MACD convergence also forming. So this really does tell us in a lot of ways that the likelihood of the price action shooting up from here, or sorry, I shouldn't use the word shooting up here because that's that's not necessarily something we want to see. We want to see healthy continuation. So for a nice continuation, whatever the case is, the likelihood is higher because we have a MACD potential convergence here. And I say potential because it hasn't actually crossed yet. The blue is a 12-day exponential moving average. The orange is a exponential moving average. That's a 26-day. And when they intersect in upward fashion, it pretty much just tells you, the average of the last X amount of days has been shifting from bearish to bullish. All right, so we can see these oscillators are starting to dissipate, and of course we can see the price action shooting up and over. Okay, so all good stuff in that regard. The 4-hour actually looks very healthy in the overall sense of things being above that level. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the moving averages, and we can see here that the 50 and the 20 are below the current price action, whereas the 200 is actually going to be a potential resistance again at 19,800. So I'd expect some kind of resiliency at 19,800. The price will potentially come up here and kind of hang out and it'll break to the upside or reject to bounce off the next key level support. That's the hope, and that's traditionally what happens. I think we have a statistical probability of that happening more than the price just shooting straight down. There's no reason for it to come down because we have nice momentous trend here, and that those overall things that we're seeing are very positive. Looking at the 1 hour here, what we want to identify is the cloud. We can see an immediate rejection through the cloud here where the price is trying to break through and hasn't yet. You got to keep in mind though, we don't have confirmation because the conversion line is still below the baseline, implying that we haven't had an official convergence. And what's cool about the baseline and the conversion and the conversion line is it works concurrent in a lot of cases with the MACD on the 4-hour. So if you can see this here, this is almost there, right? We have a very similar pattern on the 4-hour time frame for the moving average convergence divergence. Again, just something to think about, but regardless, that is essentially where we're at. Free and clear of price action, not quite so. So, once we have this guy here, this guy up here, and this guy up here, then we got a good green light to go, right? X marks the spot, whatever you want to call it. We want to be able to have confirmation. We don't have it just yet. But again, I would say if the price were to consolidate at 19,800, there's a strong likelihood we could and should see a breakout to the upside because of that. All right, what I'm focused on right now is whenever the price were to come back down and retrace, we get a higher low and we establish that. That would be fantastic, because that's really ultimately what we want to see for a continuation to the upside. Because if you saw this previous one here, there was no higher low. It just literally just dumped from there, okay? Because we didn't get that consolidation effort at a support level. So had the price come up here, come down to bounce, we would have had a second low, and that would have been able to sustain itself a lot more because of the fact that there's buying pressure at that previous support level, okay? So again, a lot of little stuff, of course, that adds up, but I would say in the general sense here, Bitcoin is looking generally healthy in the next 24 hours or the most recent past here, if you exclude this pump and dump. For the most part, I think we're in pretty good shape here, and we should experience a continuation to the upside just based on where we're at. So I'm really excited to kind of see what the next 24 hours will hold. Let me quickly double check one thing as well. We are somewhat outside the standard deviation, so we could experience a pullback soon. I think if we come up to 19.8, we will see that. Another thing to quickly look at would be the TD sequential, and we're at a 7 right now. So 7 out of a potential of 9 coming into a key level resistance. Strong rejection at 19,800 probability. I think there's a likelihood we're going to see a turnaround at that point. So again, those are just a lot of little things that we're seeing here. So generally speaking, I think this convergence on both MACDs, the 4-hour and the 1 day, will absolutely help the price action continue higher, but we're probably going to get an immediate pullback at 19,800. Of course, we're overextended on the short term. The last 7 hours have been pretty bullish. All right, so that is what we have there for you, folks. I hope that you learned something here today. Thanks so much for joining me. If you want to become a better trader, again, cryptocash.tech is a website. Join over 200 active members, and it's a really awesome experience. I look forward to working with you. Hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in the next one.